times, they are changing. Something that's interesting about time is that it moves on, and as time moves on, things change. I change. I might gain weight, or I might want to lose weight. Graham gets older. He changes a lot.
Yeah.
Think about when you could just hold him in with one arm, just like right here. And now he's walking around and talking, and
a lot of that.
He's experiencing a lot. Is he a big talker?
Yeah, he is for sure. But yeah, we're excited to talk about this today. I'm Zack, and he's Joshua, and we're excited to be here. We had some technical difficulties. And so we're coming off of that right now, but we're excited to talk about how times can change. And I guess we're not really talking about, generally speaking, time changing and all the changes that can happen. We got the geopolitics of the world right now, and all the stuff.
Yeah.
People's opinion about Will Smith has changed.
And Chris Rock.
Chris Rock, yeah.
Yeah. Now, today we're going to be talking about transitioning within ministry. So what we mean by that is, number one, if you're someone that is doing ministry as a profession, a change in ministry could be, a change in your job, a change in what you do every day, or where you do it, or how you do it. For someone that's not a paid minister, that could be maybe you're changing roles. Maybe you are now holding the title of deacon, or maybe you're now holding the title of elder, and kind of how do you deal with that transition? It also mean just a Christian, and you're moving to a new area. You have to come into a new congregation and find out how you minister with this new group of people.
You may have your niche in one place. There's a whole different dynamic, and somebody else does that job, in a new place. So it's like, where do I find where's my place at?
Yeah, or maybe you're a Christian and you're staying in the congregation where you're at, but you think it's just the time, you think it's just time for you to transition and focus on something else. The first thing I think it'd be good to talk about is how transition looks for ministers that are paid, ministers as a profession, as a title of a job.
Vocational, like that is their vocation, their job.
Yeah. So Zack, what does transition look like for you in your transitions? Because you worked in Michigan and Florida and now Georgia. How are those transitions?
So I've gotten to experience a lot of like what we're talking about today, and I feel like just about every area. Like, when I was in college, my first year of college, I didn't go to school for ministry yet, but I started teaching a men's leadership class because I wanted to institute that where I was, because I had been taught under a men's leadership class in Georgia, moved up to Missouri. And so I got to go from somebody that never really taught Bible class and somebody that, was just a member of the church. And I started teaching those men's leadership classes from like ages 12 to 50. So that was an interesting transition. Just having the responsibility put on me, and I learned a lot of things from that. But then, being a youth minister, for the first time and actually having like, this is your role and this is your job and expectations, and, transitioning from that in college to my first full-time work in Michigan. And twice I've actually experienced a ministry change within a congregation. So like when I moved up to Traverse City, Michigan, I was the family life minister, kind of like an associate minister. And the preacher was kind of like trying to get somebody under his wing, and eventually he would leave. And that's what he did. He left, and then I became the preacher there. So there was a transition within that work. The same thing has happened here in Moultrie. I was the outreach minister and worked part-time. Then Jake, the former, preacher here, he left. I put my name in the hat, as, to be considered for the full-time position. And then they did that. So there was a transition there. And I feel like one of the biggest things, as far as the way it looks and how you adapt to it, is that, there's expectations, and there's a freshness. And sometimes with a freshness, there's like a zeal and everybody's excited. But there's always a fear when you begin a new work. Am I going to be able to maintain that zeal? Everybody's excited that I'm here. They're excited that I'm taking this new responsibility or this role or whatever. And that could be said for, a vocational minister or somebody that's just a Christian taking on a Bible class or taking on some other role, or, somebody stepping up to be a deacon or an elder. Like there may be this initial excitement for that person and for the people around them. And one of the challenges is, how do I maintain that zeal? How do I make this, fresh, exciting thing not become, something that, loses zeal and just becomes apathy. And it's just like, well, he's the, this is just how things are. And, I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges. But I guess there's a whole lot that I could say about this. I want to kind of see what direction you're going in.
No, I'm just thinking about the impact, and you brought up the point that I didn't even think about. I was thinking more of, when you leave a congregation and you go to a different congregation. You brought up the fact of even transitioning even within one congregation, and that's something that I hadn't even thought about. I'm just thinking about how transition impacts a paid minister. I think about the fact that, if you have to change congregations, a lot of the ministry are people that attend church where he's ministering. Think about, if you move to a community that you don't know anyone except for church people, you're going to spend a lot of time with church people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when you have to transition to somewhere else, you lose a lot of your close friends, or the close friends that you have within that community,
right?
That you're working in, and maybe not lose is a strong word. They're not lost forever, but you don't see them every week or 2 or 3 times a week like you usually do.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I'm in the middle of a transition right now. A week ago was my last time with the congregation I was working with, and I'm just in a transitional period of getting to work with another congregation. But just thinking about all those relationships, that I've spent years making, and nurturing and growing. And now, I don't lose those relationships, but now my focus will be with the whole new set of people. I'll be trying to nurture relationships with a whole new group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes that can be difficult, to say goodbye to, the people that you've known for maybe a long time, or maybe you've gotten really close with. That can be something that can be difficult.
Oh yeah.
And for me, I'm married but don't have any children. I think about ministers that have children and they've grown up somewhere and they have close friends,
Mm-hmm.
and the thought of them having to move away from their close friends and make new ones.
Yeah.
It can be hard on a family. It might even be easier on me, but it might be harder on my wife or well, I don't have children, but hopefully one day, children to leave their friends behind.
I kind of grew up, I was not a preacher's kid, but I was moved around like I was a preacher's kid because, or like a military brat or, something like that. Because my dad, he worked for Procter and Gamble, and he kind of worked his way up, and we moved every because there's only so many promotions that you can get before you're going to be promoted to be the boss of your boss. And that he faced that a lot. So every few years we had to move to prevent that kind of situation. We moved every few years, and so I made a bunch of friends, and then I'd have to leave. And I would actually argue that you could look at that in a bad light, and maybe I don't know how to hold on to a lot of relationships when I move away. I've never been good at staying in contact with people, but I go to one place, I move, and I'm like, well, they're okay, and I'll just move to a different place. I'm used to it, but somebody that wouldn't be, it's hard. And it was hard for me when I was a kid. I loved my friends and wanted to be around my friends and all that stuff. But it can be hard, for sure, to uproot your family, uproot your, where you're established and all. And that makes the transition difficult. But I don't know. I think when that happens, attitude has to come first. You have to express that, this is, especially if, with your wife and kids, and, you need to kind of communicate that, this is a positive thing. This is a good thing that we're doing. Yes, we're going to, we're having to leave our friends, but we're going to make new friends, and they may say well, I don't want to make new friends, but that is, that is the positive thing about it. You get to meet new people, and there's going to be new experiences. And, there's a positive aspect of it. You get a fresh start. You get I don't know. I feel like trying to instill that attitude in yourself too, not just in your family, but in yourself, that, yes, I'm leaving a work and I invested so much and I did all this stuff. And, a lot of times a preacher or a minister will get a bunch of things set up, and they'll become they'll lead, maybe it's something like Lads to Leaders, or maybe they'll lead something like, some kind of youth thing, or they do this event every summer, or, Jake, one of the things he had here was we were a satellite campus for the Georgia School of Preaching under him. And he set up a lectureship summit kind of thing in Valdosta, where every area churches would go, and, big speakers would come and speak. And when he left, he was the one in charge of all of that. And it was well, what's going to happen now to these programs? Because he's left. what's going to happen, and they fizzle out because nobody knew where to pick up the reins, and they weren't set up, to continue those works. And so that happens. You can think about all the negative, but you could, I think the attitude thing is important, especially when it comes to family. But in regards to all of the things that happen when a minister leaves and when a minister arrives, and yeah.
So how was the transition for you when you changed roles within the same congregation? How was that?
So basically, I don't know how to describe it, because it's like, I feel like in both situations, I was already committed to doing the work. I just, and developing relationships with people and all of that. But like the technical parts of the ministry changed. So like I was teaching more classes. I was giving more sermons in both cases, because I was moving from like an auxiliary minister position to the pulpit ministry, and then, so I was involved with the church and doing some good stuff. And one of the things that I organized as an outreach minister here was a program called We Are Overcome. You can search it on YouTube, hashtag We Are Overcome. This was back in like 2018. And we did interviews and things, kind of like the I Am Second program, but it was about trying to get our community to see the church at Moultrie with authenticity. It was an outreach thing. So, and we had a big event and all of that stuff. So my focus was on those things. We haven't done anything like that recently, because my focus has kind of changed. I was strictly kind of looking at outreach before. Now there's other ministries, youth and all the pulpit stuff and all the, the visitation and other things. And, so priorities change. I don't think the view from the members really change, and, I've been very fortunate to work with some congregations that they try to see me as Zack and not the preacher. And, I have experienced that before. I have experienced, he's the youth minister, he's the preacher, and there's that particular, he's separate, even though he's a part, kind of thing. But I feel like, and it just so happened that it was those congregations where I had that role shift that, I have felt more like, well, this is Zack, and, people get to know me better, and they kind of see me as, this, as me versus the role that I am in. So I don't know. I don't know if the role change while I was there created that, or if it was something else. But I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for.
Well, I think about where I have been. I was the summer intern for 2 summers, and then I came on as the associate. So
So you kind of experienced that too,
right?
Yeah, and I've actually known, it's interesting how many congregations that I know of where somebody was the youth minister, and then the pulpit guy left and he became the pulpit minister. But not just that, the longevity of those individuals in those pulpit positions. I know of one guy, his name is Spencer Furby, and he was the youth minister at a congregation, and then he was the preacher after that for like 25 years at one congregation. And then I heard about somebody else recently, was in Florida. I forgot what his name was, but member here before they got here, we're talking about how he was the youth minister, and then he became the pulpit minister, and he got to see their kids grow up, and it was just kind of like, wow, like that's interesting. But maybe what that means is simply that when people see you grow, and when people see you, see you through your life changes, I think there's a I don't know how to describe it. There's a intimacy, and maybe that goes beyond the whole transition thing, but just like allowing people to be a part of your life, go through the trials and go through the changes and all of those things here. Like, I honestly think the congregation here with Moultrie, I feel so comfortable with them, because they were able to see so many of my changes and go with me through those changes, not just the transition between, roles, but they were with me through my divorce, and they're, with me now with this, new marriage, and, that we're about to, get started. And if anybody's unfamiliar with that situation, I did divorce scripturally, right? So I do want to state that if this is the only episode that you've ever, but they were with me through that. They've been with me with Graham, and they've been with me through a lot of things. And as those changes create that sort of intimacy, I think that's true for the family too. When you go through changes and you move from one place to another, the closeness of your immediate family as a minister often is more solidified. Moving around so much when I was younger, like the one constant in my life was my parents, my brother. So I have a special kind of relationship with them that I don't have anywhere else, because it's not like I was in the same school district as my friends my entire life, and I have lifelong friends or anything like that. But I think there's intimacy through transition, which is an interesting concept.
No, intimacy through leaving, through maybe not leaving, but yeah, like you said. And
it's the same with you and Morgan. You're gonna, you're transitioning, and I think that ultimately is just gonna make you closer.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's done so far, at least. So hopefully it'll keep on doing that. Yeah, it's been good for us. Change forces me to evaluate and to look at things, whether they need to be changed or not. But it just allows me to stop and evaluate the things that I'm doing, the things that we're doing, and it allows for the uneasiness. That's not a word, but the comes a transition causes growth. Growing pains, as we would call it, a little bit. So paid ministers. I think there's, in the past, preachers moved quite a bit, or ministers moved often, but I've noticed that's being less so recently. I think people are understanding the value in, a preacher being at a congregation for a long time. He can get really involved in the community, and but at the end of the day, ministers, they move all the time. So yeah, if you are being a minister as your profession, then there will be transitions that happen. After the mid-roll, we're going to talk a little bit about what transition looks like for Christians. That you're not a paid minister, but you're still serving and you're still a minister.
Thanks so much for watching or listening today. We ask that you will please like, subscribe, share, comment, do all of that stuff on our social media. You can listen to us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can also watch the show on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. We want to mention the Ministry League. We're part of the Ministry League Network, and they are a fantastic group of people, fantastic league of ministers. So go download the Ministry League app if you haven't done so already. It's got a lot of Christian resources, access to a library of podcasts and other resources. So it's a great thing to have. Also, check out the Bearing Up shop. There's lots of good things on there. There's a Rep Your Convictions product line that's up, and you can get a lot of awesome things, and all of that supports our work. We appreciate your support in that way, and we appreciate your support in listening or watching this video today, watching this episode. So without further ado, we'll get back into it, and thanks again for joining us.
I want to take some time to talk about transitions within a congregation, whether that be, you get the title of deacon, or maybe the title of elder, or you're transitioning from being a deacon to an elder, and how all that looks. Just in how there are changes that come along with that. Like the transition from deacon to elder. A deacon has a specific work or specific thing that they're in charge of, or they lead. And an elder or a shepherd is supposed to shepherd, as in they give a lot of those works to the deacons. Those are those responsibilities that they have, and it is our job to shepherd. I've seen people go through that sometimes, and they not want to give up the work that they were over, that they were responsible for.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it so, or they know that they can do it the right way, and it's just a hard transition from one to the next. And for me, I think it's realizing that I'm not a deacon nor an elder, but I have transitioned from a youth intern to an associate. So I understand what it's like to give up some responsibilities, maybe that you really enjoy, or maybe you feel like you've been doing it for a while and you're good at it. But specifically from deacon to elder, just realizing what your role is, or realizing what you're responsible.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that a deacon's work is a specific ministry, but shepherding is guarding souls, and is it's all about people and less about programs or things that can be more physical in nature. And I've seen people make the transition in an easier way or a better way, because they realize the gravity of souls, of what their responsibility is.
Yeah. Here in Moultrie, our elders are about to, I guess we're about to celebrate 1 year with them, because they're still kind of in a transition process. They're still, trying to learn how to do this. And, oftentimes, ideal situation is somebody is a deacon before they're an elder. Well, that didn't happen here because we didn't have either for like 40 years. But we got that going. And, I'm told by them sometimes, how they had wished, that they were a deacon and they got to experience what it's like under the leadership of elders before jumping in that position. Because by and large, they have not seen firsthand, what, a good eldership can be and what it can look like. They haven't experienced the the bad elderships, or I maybe I would reframe that, but I can't think of a better word. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess you can have worldly minded elderships. They exist. They do. But they weren't able to see that. So you could say it's a good thing because they turn to scripture, and that's where they get their, this is what it means to be an elder, and this is what we need to do, and this is what we need to be focused on. And so that's a wonderful thing. I think if you're only the only way that you're figuring out how to be a leader is by scripture, I think that may be a good thing. Of course, there's value in the experience. There's value in like seeing firsthand. And so their thing is, they're trying to figure out, because the one thing that they did have and the one thing that they have been used to is the men's business meeting, right? A lot of congregations that don't have elders, they have this men's business meeting. All the men come together and they decide the business, and they do a vote, and they do all that stuff. So I've been to like a few meetings. I don't go to all the elders meetings because I'm not an elder.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see that there's a temptation to, well, we're going to run this like a men's business meeting, except it's 3 people, and so there is definitely a challenge. And I can't even pretend to imagine what that would be like. I know what it means, for a minister to move and, to change roles and different things like that. But, to be a member that doesn't have and that's the thing, like elders don't go to college to get a bachelor's degree in Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Their experience is based on their personal study that they've done over the many years that they've been a Christian. And their experience in their work, and in the church, and and then they get put into this position. It's like, all right, now you're a shepherd. You're looking over souls, and so I can't even begin to talk about how that feels and what that looks like, from a personal standpoint. But I think that what we can learn and what we could probably take away from this is, and I don't think that our audience is primarily in this situation. I don't think that our audience is primarily people who are becoming elders. So I will say to our audience that, we need to think of some fruitful ways to encourage, and build up, and, realize that, just because they're qualified for the position doesn't make it easy for them to change into this position or to, adapt to that new role. Just because they're qualified doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And so I don't know, we need to think of some ways that we can build them up and encourage them.
Well, just as the difference is, I think of myself being 22 years old, coming into ministry, out of college. They might be in their 50s or 60s, but they're coming into this brand new role, and because of their age, they've had more experiences than someone younger. But that doesn't mean that they've had more experiences in being an elder or having this position.
Yeah.
So just as we would encourage like a 20-something-year-old minister who's brand new to the ministry, I think we need to encourage elders, especially in your situation,
Mm-hmm.
they're all brand new elders. Encourage them the same way.
Yeah. I think that something else on this topic before we move on is that if we can get, somebody that's thinking about, becoming an elder or a deacon or whatever, for both of those roles, if we can introduce the work of such to that individual before they take on the role, it makes it a lot easier, I feel like, so for instance, I feel that the men who are elders here now were already doing the work of shepherds before. And there's a congregation, it's that congregation I worked with, Traverse City in Michigan. They didn't have elders when I was there. 3 months after I left, they did have elders. So we talked about it a lot. And, the guy who came in, the preacher, he got them going and they did it. And like, I'm very proud that they were able to accomplish that, but one of the guys who's an elder there now, but wasn't then, he said, just because we don't have shepherds, by role, right, doesn't mean that there's not shepherding to be done. And so here I was seeing that shepherding take place in these 3 men. I saw them doing that shepherding. They would go and do visits with people, and they would help, make the, they would be the ones to bring forth a lot of the issues and things and programs and all of that in the men's business meetings. They would not necessarily head up the meetings, but they would be the ones that issued the concerns, and they had eyes for things. Like good elders, they have eyes for things. What needs to be addressed? What problems need to be, taken care of? What's something else that we can do as a church? Those kinds of things. They all express that. They all show that before becoming elders. They have taught Bible classes. They've, done things where, like, I remember I was going through something, and one of them just the night before this thing happened, invited me over to his house so he could pray with me. That was before he was an elder. And I'm just like, that's some shepherding right there. To kind of take me under their wing just to invite me over to pray. Like, that's the work of an elder. And he was doing that. He did that before he took on the role. So I think that if we're thinking about trying to, introduce or try to establish these men into these roles, I think that, trying to introduce them to the work before the role can help with that transition some. And to remind them when they are in that role that, yes, you've already been shepherding, and we're thankful for that kind of work that you did before, and are thankful that you've taken on this task of being shepherds or being deacons now.
And that's with every, that's with anything. Like, for instance, you don't want me, you don't want me to be in an organizational spot. So for me, you don't want to be deacon over finances, because I'm not saying that I'm not good at my own finances, but I'm not an organized guy. Things would not go well. Just as, thinking about a deacon, you can be a deacon and not necessarily be just a super people person. There's a guy at my home congregation that, he doesn't talk a lot. He's real quiet, but he's the deacon over maintenance. He's a mechanic, and he's, he does a great job with that. Putting people in place, where they can transition easier, because it's what they're naturally good at, because it's what they're, like you said, what they're doing already. You don't want, it's hard to be, a good shepherd if you're not a people person. If you don't love people, it's hard to say, yeah, let's make them a shepherd. They don't like sheep, but let's make them a shepherd. Yeah, that would not be a great thing to do. Yeah. So, and what I've seen is sometimes, I've seen men become deacons over works that maybe they're not naturally good at, or maybe they don't enjoy. And that transition becomes a lot more difficult. It becomes a lot harder because they don't have experience doing that before, or it's just not in them, to do that specific type of thing. So yeah, putting the right people in place and making sure that they're doing it beforehand makes the transition a whole lot easier, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any more on that before we?
No, let's go ahead. We'll get on to the last thing here.
All right. So thinking about someone, that doesn't have a title per se, whether it's minister, elder, deacon, but you're a Christian and you love God and you love God's people. So you're teaching Bible classes and you're helping, host kids at your house on Friday nights, or maybe you're taking the senior citizens to do things. Maybe you're helping with some widows in your congregation. Maybe you're mowing yards. Maybe, you're, no matter what you're doing, we all tend to find what we're good at. We gravitate towards what we're good at. And let's say that you have a change in your job, or you have to move, and you show up to this brand new congregation and they're doing lots of stuff. And you say, well, I know what I'm good at. What do you do in that situation? What do you do to make sure that you're ministering the way that you need to? I would say that number one, you have to get plugged in. You have to know what the congregation has. Are they lacking in any area? And at that point, you have to ask yourself, well, am I the person to help in this area? If we've got 20 guys that can do finance and our accountants, there's a good chance that they probably got that covered. And let's say you got people that do maintenance, or they take care of the building, or take care of the vans or the buses. Let's say you've got 20 men that's over that. You probably got it covered.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just getting plugged in and seeing what the needs are, and having enough self-awareness to know, hey, I could help with that, because I'm good at this, or I enjoy doing this, or saying, that's not my thing.
Well, something that comes to mind for me is I feel like Christian women are so much better at this than Christian men. They are so good about trying to get plugged in, oftentimes. And I just speak generally, because sometimes, it's hard for you to find your place. And I understand that. But I'm going to brag on my mom for a minute, because she's moved around a lot, but she always finds a way to kind of get plugged in some way. And sometimes it's a leadership thing, and sometimes it's not. She did a program down here, and I don't think it was original to her, but she found out about the program. And it's called the Ladybugs. And what it is the bug stands for Better Understanding God. And she led this here in Moultrie when I was in high school. And she kind of headed up this program where she took the young ladies under her wing, and they got involved in a lot of different things, and they wrote cards together and did projects together and all kinds of stuff like that. And the ladies here still talk about that. The ladies that were part of that program. And then when she was up in Collinsville, Illinois, they had a program there called Apron Brigade. And this was something that was already started, but she joined in with that. And it was, just a way of kind of, they did meals for people, and they did, cards, and they did other projects, and they did, uh, donation things like I think like I can't remember exactly if they did like clothing drives or baked good drives or like you know different things like that. They just did all kinds of stuff, and I feel like you know that's something that I feel like a lot of Christian women do a lot better than Christian men. I feel like sometimes it's harder for men to get plugged in, especially if there's no sort of like men's projects or men's things, men's days, or, I feel like it's far more common to have ladies' days or, ladies' outings or things like that at a congregation than there are men's organizations like that. So, I think the best thing that one can do when they arrive at a new congregation is to talk with the leadership. Talk with the preacher, talk with the elders, talk with their wives. if you're a lady, talk with their wives and what are some of the things that you do? Because usually and not every case, but usually the elders' wives, the preacher's wife, they may be involved in something, and or at least they know what's going on and what people are doing, and can point you to the right place, the right direction. I think one thing that we can do as ministers is be aware of those sorts of things, be aware of who to talk to, and uh, be able to, if you're not heading up something or trying to find a place, be aware of what is going on and try to point them in the right direction. But I think that the best thing to do when you enter a new congregation and you're setting up shop and you're making a home there is develop a relationship with the leaders. And when you do that and they see you, for instance, as somebody that's kind of a go-getter and, wants to work, when something opens up, when something happens, you're going to be one of the first people that they call. If you present yourself as, and that might be a hard thing to do. You might be introverted and you may not know like how to talk to new people and stuff like that. Some people are shy when they meet new people, even when they're an adult. It's not just kids that are shy around new people. But kind of get those things started and, try to get off on the right foot can make the world of difference.
Yeah. Well, I think talking about transition, number one, it's important for me because I'm in a transitional period in my life. But I know that transition happens all the time, for people. So it's something that I wanted to have a conversation with you about because, as much as people move, there are people in transition right now, that need to have a conversation about it because there are difficult aspects to transition. But some things that I've had to remind myself of is that I think of Joseph and how many transitions he had in life from his dad to slavery to Potiphar's house to jail to Pharaoh's house. And then I think about the end of Genesis and how Joseph has this phrase, God meant it for good.
Yeah.
And I think about in whatever transition that we're in, we have to realize that God is working in ways that we don't understand. And God is putting things in place behind the scenes that we don't know about. And he's putting us in places. He's sending opportunities our way to better the church and to better the kingdom and to open doors, that, if we would have stayed where we were, they would have never been open. So if you're in a transitional moment right now, and there are difficult moments in that, just realize that in this transition, God will present opportunities that may have never happened. And we will in transition, we'll be able to do things for God's kingdom that they're going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a perfect point to end on. Faith can't be separate from this whole discussion. And I think that as many crucial things as we've talked about, or the way that I've kind of framed them as crucial things, the most is to depend on God through it all. Be fervent in prayer, be intercessory in prayer, bring those things to God continually, and have an attitude of dependence on God through it all. No matter what happens, no matter what changes are going to take place, and no matter how difficult it may be on the first foot, it's God is going to bring me through this. And God is going to bless me in this work, and he's going to guide me in this, and maybe he'll introduce some challenges for me to grow. But yeah, I really appreciate that you're ending it on that point. I appreciate that a lot, because that's crucial.
Yep. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation today. I enjoy everything that I have with you, Zach. But yeah, I will. If you're good, I'll pray for us, and then we'll have our servant spotlight.
Sounds good.
All right, let's pray. Lord, my God, I want to thank you for today. I'm thankful. It might be hard to say sometimes, but we're thankful for transitions. We're thankful for newness that comes along with transitions. And I hope that we use every opportunity we can to grow ourselves and to grow your church. I'm thankful for everything that you do for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So our service spotlight today is Gary and Rosemary McKnight, because my wife Morgan has started a new job at Freed-Hardeman, and we currently don't have a place to stay in Henderson, and it's almost a 2-hour commute from where we live in Lawrenceburg. So Morgan is able to stay at Gary and Rosemary's house, and we just really appreciated the fact that they've opened up their home to us and have let us stay here. We'll let her stay here, until we can move. So they have the servant spotlight today. So we thank you for joining us. We thank you for listening to this conversation, and we hope you have a great day.